Our top story tonight comes from West Asia as Israel threatens to open the gates of hell in Gaza, quote unquote. American strategic bombers seem to have reached the war zones. That's right. According to reports online and data from flight radar, an air squadron consisting of 6 military aircraft belonging to the US Air Force has been flying over the Mediterranean Sea. In fact, the squadron reportedly includes 2 Boeing B-52 Stratofortress bombers, which are American strategic bombers, and 48 Boeing KC-135 Strato tanker aircraft designated for refueling jets and bombers in midair. The warplanes reportedly took off on Monday from an American base in England, and their flight path shows them flying over the Mediterranean, near southern Europe and North Africa. There is a possibility that these warplanes are heading towards West Asia, although it is not yet clear. Still, this development would not be surprising, as the future of an already fragile Gaza ceasefire is hanging by a thread. In fact, over the weekend, the American Secretary of State Marco Rubio kicked off his first West Asia tour, showing strong support for Israel and issuing a warning to Iran. Rubio's words encouraged Israel as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to, quote-unquote, finish the job against Iran and threatened Hamas with US backing. The Trump administration also sent heavy Mk-84 bombs to Israel, lifting a previous block imposed by Joe Biden. And this shows a united front between the US and Israel on Gaza. And on what? Gaza's total destruction. Because just have a look at the visuals on your screen. This is what Gaza looks like today. A picture of destruction, of total devastation, to say the least. Israel's Prime Minister warns of opening the gates of hell on Gaza. In fact, even US President Trump has described Gaza as a hellhole. But the question is, what more can possibly be devastated in Gaza? Over 48,200 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza by Israeli attacks in the war. Around 90% of Gaza's population has been displaced. And over 245,000 housing units have been damaged in Gaza. Ask that question and you will get no answer, perhaps, at least from Israel. Israel is reportedly still blocking the entry of shelters into the Gaza Strip, which was one of the conditions, remember, of the ceasefire agreement. Tens of thousands of mobile homes, part of the ceasefire deal, have not yet been allowed into Gaza. They remain stuck at the Rafah crossing with Egypt, awaiting Israeli permission to enter. Under the ceasefire, Israel had agreed to allow 60,000 mobile homes and 10,000 tents into Gaza. However, now reports indicate that only 20,000 tents have been allowed in, and none of the mobile homes have gained access. And now, as Israel continues with its aggression in Gaza, it has sent a negotiating team to Egypt to discuss a hostage deal. And reports indicate that the Israeli government is seeking to modify the terms of the deal with support from Washington. Specifically, Israel is calling for the 6 surviving hostages remaining in Gaza, who are scheduled to be released in the initial phase of the agreement, to be freed all at once next Saturday, rather than in 2 groups of 3. Over the final 2 weeks of this phase, which ends on March 1. Quick question at this point: is Israel preparing to return to aggression in Gaza? We ask that because of the conflicting messages coming in from Israel. You see, on one hand, Israel has sent a team to Cairo. On the other hand, it continues to block aid supplies to Gaza. And that's not all. Threats have been made to open the gates of hell if Hamas does not release the remaining captives. The Trump administration, in fact, is now fully backing Israel's military objectives in Gaza, casting further doubts on the already shaky truce deal. And there appears to be little political will from Netanyahu, and certainly from his right-wing allies, to proceed with the second phase of the ceasefire. Just for context here, phase 2 of the ceasefire deal is set to commence immediately after the first phase ends on the 1st of March. And this phase basically would involve the release of all remaining male Israeli captives, including soldiers. So far, 19 hostages have been released. In exchange, Israel will fully withdraw from Gaza and release more Palestinian prisoners. However, Netanyahu, facing immense pressure at home from the families of hostages and from far-right elements within his cabinet, finds himself in a deadlock. Resuming military action after Trump established the goal of expelling Palestinians from Gaza would be seen by allies as a failure. Yet, moving forward with the second stage of the ceasefire could topple Netanyahu's government, and he is in a challenging position. Remember, Israel has not met its goal to wipe out Hamas, and now with Trump's big goals for Gaza, that goal seems even more difficult to achieve for Israel. And on the other hand, continuing with a ceasefire, a full withdrawal from Gaza, and prisoner exchanges, including the release of high-profile prisoners, seems virtually impossible for Netanyahu's current government. And what happens next is anybody's guess. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has sparked another political storm, and this time the opposition is calling it outright authoritarian and questioning Trump's view of power and the Constitution. Trump posted on Truth Social and X, I'm quoting here, "He who saves his country does not violate any law," quote unquote. The White House's official X account reinforced the message by sharing it alongside Trump's presidential portrait. But does that phrase sound familiar to you? Well, it's not original. In fact, it's a quote often attributed to Napoleon Bonaparte, the French general who declared himself emperor and ruled with an iron grip. And Trump has referenced Napoleon before as well. But this latest remark has reignited fears among his opponents, with Democrats and political experts wasting no time in reacting. Reacting to Trump's post, U.S. Senator from California, Adam Schiff, said that the U.S. president has, quote-unquote, spoken like a true dictator. Meanwhile, former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence took a more indirect approach. On X, he reshared a 2010 essay that he wrote, titled "The Presidency and the Constitution," warning that a president who disregards the Constitution is bound to fall, taking the nation down with him. Elon Musk, who heads the U.S. Department of Government Efficiency, reposted Trump's message on X with 14 U.S. flag emojis. Now, this latest row comes on the heels of another turbulent week in Trump's second term. The Trump administration has aggressively pushed agendas. But U.S. federal judges have repeatedly intervened, blocking key policies aimed at restructuring federal agencies and budgets. Trump's allies are questioning the legitimacy of these judicial rulings, fueling concerns overall about an escalating power struggle. In fact, recently, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance posted on X, and I'm quoting here, "Judges are not allowed to control the executive's legitimate power." While last week, during a news briefing, the White House press secretary accused the media of fear-mongering about a constitutional crisis, adding that the real constitutional crisis is taking place within the U.S. judicial branch, where district court judges are abusing their power to block Trump's basic executive authority. And Trump and the U.S. courts have been at odds over multiple issues. We've been telling you about that. For example, last week, a federal judge in Boston halted the Trump administration's plan to cut $4 billion in federal funding for medical research. In fact, the legal cases against the Trump administration are only piling up. According to the Associated Press, Trump's administration is entangled in at least 70 lawsuits across the U.S., cases ranging from Trump's efforts to revoke birthright citizenship to his decision to freeze federal grants and even unauthorized access to sensitive government databases by unofficial entities, with legal challenges mounting and his defiance growing bolder. Experts have said that Trump's words and actions are under scrutiny. So is Trump merely pushing boundaries, or is there more to this than meets the eye? To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And let's now switch attention to the Democratic Republic of Congo, or DRC, where the Rwandan-backed M23 rebels have been advancing deep in the mineral-rich eastern region. And now the African Union has sent a stark warning that Congo could very well break up if the situation in the eastern part of the country remains the same. The African Union's Peace and Security Commissioner has said that the organization is strictly against the balkanization of Eastern DRC. What does he mean and why is this being said? Our next report getting you the complete story.
M23 fighters and Rwandan troops got a rather glorious reception as they entered the DR Congo provincial capital of Bukavu, shortly after having seized the region's main Goma airport about 30 kilometers away. Here are images and scenes of celebration, with people on the streets clapping and cheering on as the fighters marched and drove into the city center. With practically no resistance from government troops. Since the beginning of the year, the rebel group M23 has been on the offensive in the eastern part of the country and has steadily gained ground. Bukavu being the second key city after Goma and home to 1 million people to fall to the rebels in the mineral-rich region in the past few weeks. A fall barely defended by the Congolese armed forces or the FARDC. A move which could lead the M23 forces to gain complete control in the coming days. Reacting to this, Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi slammed what he said were Rwanda's expansionist ambitions, as well as accused Rwanda of ignoring calls for an immediate ceasefire. As the troops closed in on Bukavu's outskirts, shops and businesses had closed in the city, while frightened civilians were seen fleeing homes. In a conflict that appears to be escalating by the hour, fears of violence gripped Bukavu. So much so that the civil groups urged Congolese troops not to fight in the city.
We want the authorities who are now in the city to help us with our security. Here in Bukavu, we have a serious problem with these young children who have already taken up arms. They are shooting in the neighborhoods, preventing people from going to work. We ask the authorities in the city to take these children, not to kill them, but just to take away their weapons so that every citizen can go about their daily activities as usual.
On the other hand, the leaders of the African Union warn against the balkanization or the breakup of the DRC. The AU's Peace and Security Commissioner told reporters that they are demanding for the immediate removal of M23 and their supporters from all towns and cities, including the Goma airport.
The only way to solve the problem in Eastern DRC is for all parties to sit around the table. And the African Union is ready to play that mediation role.
The rapid advance of rebel forces in the country's east since the beginning of 2025 has stoked fears of a broader regional war, which dates back to tensions and clashes that erupted during the Rwandan genocide in 1990. And decades later, as it stands now, it is no longer just a regional conflict, but one that has rattled other nations as well. From the looks of it, the rebels appear to be pretty much unstoppable when it comes to capturing more territories and taking them swiftly under control. What happens next? Will peace return soon or remain a distant hope in the strife-torn region? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.